Hello there, and a huge welcome to today's episode of Gina Gardiner and Friends. Today I'm joined by Ral West. Now, I don't know many people who come from Alaska, but this is a lady who is an entrepreneur and has been one for over 40 years, based in Alaska. She is a business mentor, and her story has many twists and turns, but my goodness, it is one of success. And I'm really looking forward to the conversation. Ral, a huge welcome to the show. Thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Gina. It's fun to be here.
Now, we're going to be talking about living the dream. And there are
Mm.
many people who want to live the dream, but their lives have become a bit of a nightmare rather than a dream.
Mm.
Let's talk about your story. How did it all start? Because you've done many things and lots of things that many people would aspire to, but I know it won't have all been plain sailing.
Yes. Well, I guess going back to the very beginning, I was born and raised in Seattle, Washington, which is not too far from Alaska. But my family had roots in Alaska going back to the gold rush. And my mother was the first Miss Alaska in 1937.
Goodness.
So, so I guess it was only natural or meant to be that I moved to Alaska in my 20s and got a job as a director of marketing in a tour company in a city way down south in Alaska. But after about a year there, I decided I would be better off being my own boss because I always felt like I knew more than the people I worked for, you know.
It's
Maybe
a
typical for
pretty quick realization for that. Most people take at least a decade to get there.
I guess, typical for maybe a 20 something, I knew everything, right?
Yes.
So I moved north to Anchorage, Alaska, and my background was tourism. My family was involved in Alaska tourism, so that was in my blood, and I'd been trained in it for decades already. And so I opened a small business providing marketing consulting for businesses involved in tourism. And it was there that I met my future husband. And I was representing some companies in Hawaii because I was representing them as a sales representative to Alaska travel agents, um, conveying the message about their hotels and rental cars and inter island air. And this man that I met across the hall in the executive suite where we had our tiny offices, he said, I want to go to Hawaii on business trips like you do. How do I do that? He was involved in real estate. So he thought, there are a lot of Alaskans who own condos in Hawaii and their vacation rental condos. So I'll represent them and, I'll get a commission for every booking that I do. And I said, well, that sounds good, but, you should package it with the inner island air and the rental cars. And, those are the people that I was representing. And so he did that. And then he started to gradually buy tickets on the carriers that would take people by air from Alaska to Hawaii. And that worked fine. And of course, but in the meantime, we got married. It was almost 42 years ago that we got married.
Oh, goodness me.
And at one point, the air carriers, the scheduled carriers, pulled out of the market. They decided they're not going to fly between Alaska and Hawaii anymore. So anybody who in Alaska who wanted to go to Hawaii had to go through Seattle or San Francisco or Los Angeles, and that just made it a longer and more expensive trip. And we were faced with, oh, should we close the doors? I mean, we can't live on this. And then we decided, no, the people of Alaska really need this. This is almost like a public service. And we figured it out. And my husband found a plane that was actually on the ground in Anchorage for quite a while because it was running some charters between Anchorage and Japan. And he went to the airline and said, well, instead of your plane just sitting on the ground in Anchorage, why don't we use it and take people, but from Anchorage to Honolulu? So he negotiated, and people were all around us were saying, "Well, you're crazy. This is a summertime charter. Nobody in Alaska goes to Hawaii in the summertime. That's when everybody wants to stay, when Alaska's beautiful."
Yes.
And I got out my spreadsheets and analyzed the numbers that we had done in the previous summers and realized that we had the numbers. We had sold enough seats to to
Yes.
fill this charter. So it was a huge risk, but we took it, and we needed to come up with um, collateral for a letter of credit. And we didn't have it. By that time, we were making payroll by taking cash advances on our credit cards, our
Oh my
personal
goodness.
credit cards.
Right.
So John's mother, who was a school teacher, had a retirement account, and she was willing to pledge her retirement account to secure this charter for us.
Goodness
So
me.
it was quite mandatory that we make this a success, you know.
I can imagine the pressure that you were under. Let me just
Yeah.
clarify. So, was this a single plane going out there and coming back, or was this a
Yeah.
regular thing that you were had negotiated? How did it work?
Yeah. It was about once a week that we would fly this plane, which is, I believe it was a DC-8, so 200 and something passengers that
And
we needed to
passengers
fill.
to fill consistently, isn't it?
Yes, because we paid a flat amount.
Yes,
So whether we
whether it was
sold
full or not.
yeah, one seat or all of them, we had to pay the same amount. So that was the risk. So there were, we had to sell X number of seats to break even. And then if we got above that, then we'd have some profit. So yeah, that was a huge risk. And my husband's a good salesman, but he became an extraordinary salesman that summer.
Just as a
And
matter of interest, bearing in mind that you were wanting to sell the real estate opportunities in Hawaii, did you
just
deviate?
renting the condos.
Just renting. Okay, so
Yeah.
they were actually going out to be on holiday or to have a.
Yes.
Okay, right,
Yeah.
that's interesting. And
Yeah.
those condos were they his? Did he rent them on behalf of other people and get a commission? How did that?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. He would approach people who owned condos and who were trying to rent them to vacationers, and he would get a commission for everyone that he rented. And then we started contracting with larger condominium property managers and hotels. And the company was growing. So we had quite an inventory of accommodations that we could offer, and we packaged vacations. So we would put together, by this time, we were, of course, putting together with the Trans-Pacific Air, getting from Alaska to Hawaii, and any air between the islands and the rental cars and the accommodations, and sometimes the activities, the luau or Polynesian Cultural Center or whatever else people wanted to do. So yeah, so we named it Hawaiian Vacations, and
How long did you do that for?
25 years.
Goodness me.
Yeah.
Um, the advantage, I suppose, is that you have something that's very different to Alaska to offer. That you'd
Yes.
seen a space in the market where there was a desire to go there, but you
Yeah.
were making it very easy. People didn't have to think, oh, I need my flight, oh, I need my accommodation, and oh, what about a rental car? And I
Right.
think that having that package makes it very attractive then, doesn't it, for people who are busy and who just want to go and enjoy themselves and not think about anything else.
Exactly. I mean, we were promoting the living the dream back then. It's like, oh, go to Hawaii for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever and take your family. And we, like I said, we felt we were doing a public service because people need this break. And particularly in the winter in Alaska and Anchorage and Fairbanks, it can get quite cold, and it's darker in the winter. And so this was a necessary mental health break for everyone.
What made you decide after 25 years that actually you didn't want to do this anymore?
That's an excellent question. So as the company grew, we were able to hand the management over to a chief operating officer and a chief financial officer, and they grew it even more. We were doing 8 digits in revenue every year, and very successful. And we were taking very good care of our customers in the Alaska market. And we had customers in Hawaii too. There were Hawaiians that wanted to come to Alaska. So it was kind of a fire and ice kind of thing. And at towards the um, early 2000s, we had heard that Alaska Airlines was planning to expand to Hawaii. And we figured that their entry into the Hawaii market would start on the West Coast, the Seattle, San Francisco, Los Angeles. But we knew that it wouldn't be long before they'd start eyeing our market. And our market was kind of, off to the corner. This Anchorage to Honolulu was
They
the
could
main
see
main.
actually that there was traction there because you were successful.
Yes, and we'd already successfully beat efforts by Hawaiian Airlines and Northwest Airlines to offer the air service, and we kept winning the market from them. So they tucked tail and ran and said, "Oh, okay, we can't make it because we were so good at making our customers happy. This was our mission to make every customer delighted with our service." And we had this thing called a valuable final product, where for us that was somebody getting off the plane when they came back to Alaska and they were tan and happy and wanting to go back to Hawaii again. And that was our mission.
And your greatest advocates are people who've used your service and enjoyed it, aren't they? Word of mouth is so powerful.
Yes, and we had a great deal of repeat business. Some people went to Hawaii 2 or 3 times a year, and that was wonderful.
Excellent.
So, so
You-
we
You've got
were very
an
good.
airline breathing down your neck wanting to nobble your business. And of course, they have the wherewithal, don't they, to undercut you and for people to think that looks like a better deal. Not sure about the customer service. However, that's
Yeah,
not always the consideration when people are looking to get away.
right. Right. So we knew that, if they came into the market, or well, when they came into the market, we would give them a fight
Yeah.
and we wouldn't just go out easily. So we would all lose money because we'd start cutting the airfares down to where we couldn't make much money, and they would too. So it'd be just a matter of time before, their pockets were deeper than ours, and so we would have to concede the market. So we hired an investment banking firm and put a package together and approached Alaska Airlines and said it would be cheaper for you to buy us than to win this market by competing with us. So, and we approached other buyers as well, but they were the logical one. And so it took a couple of years to
Right.
convince.
I
And
was going to be my next question. How ready
yeah,
were they to listen to that argument? And was it 2 years because there was a lot of legal stuff to be done, or did it take the time to actually get them to see the benefits of buying?
both, both. So first we had to break down the door, and get them to think about it. And they did their research, and they knew what we were doing in the market. It was pretty public, it was well known how many flights we were running, because by that time we were chartering wide body jets and running several times a week. And so we were carrying over 35,000 passengers a year. And so they could get the numbers from the Port of Anchorage, who ran the airport in Anchorage, so they would know how many flights we were doing, and they had a pretty good idea. And they also knew the kind of loyalty that we had in our market. We were very good at supporting our community. We even won awards for our community service, and we just took good care of the people that were, our market. They were our customers, and we loved them, and we took good care of them. And we would offer trips to nonprofit groups so that they could, raise money with a raffle or something. And all of that, we were very, very generous in the community, and that was rewarded by their loyalty. And so Alaska Airlines, figured out that yeah, it would take a bit to get into that market and win the market from our loyal customers. So yeah, so we had a lot of discussions, a lot of negotiations, lawyers and accountants, and all kinds of things involved. So
How
by the
did that
time,
feel? That was your baby. You'd birthed it together,
yeah,
created something very successful. Um, how did it feel when you had to really you had we've always got a choice, but the choice was either you were proactive or you could actually cut your own throat by the way in which you dealt with this. What was that
yeah.
like?
Oh, well, it was emotional.
I'm sure.
And a bit stressful. I mean, we had already stepped out of the day-to-day operation and had started living our dream because we had these managers running the company. So that part wouldn't be a huge change. We had actually moved from Anchorage to where we are in Sitka right now in about 2003. And the sale didn't close until January of 2008. So, we were already off and, kind of doing our thing. We bought a second home on Maui. Um, we had a yacht. So we were traveling around the world. We were enjoying ourselves, but our identity was still pretty much wrapped up in Hawaiian vacations. And I think it was harder for my husband than it was for me because I had a lot of other interests. I had nonprofits. I was chair of the board of a school and, on the board of a board of trustees for a university and doing a number of different things. I was also on the board of directors for the Alaska Raptor Center here in Sitka that takes care of eagles and hawks and so forth. So I had lots of things going on, but he was still pretty much married to his baby. So that was a big adjustment for him, but we knew it was the right thing to do.
Yes,
And,
that makes a huge difference, doesn't it? When you
yeah,
know ultimately you've done the right thing. We're going to
yeah,
go for a short break now. When we come back,
okay,
I want to then take you forward from that point
yeah,
because big change. Don't go away. Lots to talk about. See you in a minute.
thank you.
Welcome back. So, Raoul, you've now, the company has gone, you've sold it, and there are benefits to that. And as you'd said before the break, that you are no longer dealing with the day-to-day operational side of the business. But nevertheless, it's a significant change in your life circumstances.
Mhm.
What, how did you move on from there? What have you done since then?
Well, when we started the process to sell the company, we were trying to figure out a way to keep our staff employed. We had, like 25 people who were depending on us for their livelihood, and we had an office and a computer system and, all of the infrastructure, a reservation system. And we thought, okay, what else can we do? We obviously can't compete with Alaska Airlines by selling air between Alaska and Hawaii, but what else could we do that would utilize our asset?
Yes.
And we thought about these small cruise ships that were sitting at a dock in Seattle. Their owner had gone bankrupt, so the bank now owned these ships, and they were just sitting there, kind of rotting because they weren't being used. So they were tied up to the dock, and they had power going on, but nobody was taking care of them. And so we went to the bank that owned them and said, we could buy these ships from you and we'll start operating them. We thought, well, we'll just start a little cruise line. And my family was already involved in Alaska tourism and had some small cruise ships. So we were kind of familiar with what that looked like. And we had a different idea for operating the kind of cruises in Alaska where the way that we used our yacht, which was going into remote little bays and anchoring for the night and getting out the kayaks and just playing, watching the whales and the eagles and so forth, and really getting into nature as opposed to most of the cruise ships that were operating in Alaska and still go from port to port to port. So they only spend a certain amount of time in a city and they don't really get out and really feel like the real Alaska. And so we thought this would be a new concept for Alaska cruising. And we made an offer on these ships. The bank accepted the offer. And so then we hired people to do the due diligence to examine the ships. And, it's like you have a building inspection when you're buying a house. We had to do the same thing with these ships. And divers went down and measured the steel in the hulls and found that they had degraded and they needed more work. The steel needed to be built up to Coast Guard standards. And so we went back to the bank and said, okay, we're going to need to drop the price because we're going to have to spend, mid six digits getting these boats, seaworthy. And the bank said no. So we said, okay, well, then enjoy, sitting on these ships for a few more years. Yes,
And
we're not
watching
gonna,
them sink.
yeah, yeah. So then that went our opportunity to keep our staff and use all of the infrastructure. So we helped everybody find jobs. We gave them, nice exit packages and so forth. We took care of them. And then, we thought, okay, well, I guess we're gonna, just enjoy life.
Yes.
And then shortly after we sold the business, and that original bank had gone out of business, was taken over by another bank. And this new banker came to us and said, we know that you were interested in these ships. Would you like them now? And we said, well, no, we don't need them now. We don't have the staff. We don't have the office. All of that was gone. And so why, we don't want to operate a cruise line now. And they said, well, these are going on the auction block this Friday, and whoever has the lowest bid will win. And what are we going to do? And then we went to somebody that we knew in the cruise business who had a company that was using very small ships, and these ships were less than 100 passengers,
Right.
so they're
Yeah.
little little ships. And they were operating ships that were like maybe the biggest was like 36 passengers. So we said, would you want to operate these two ships and add to your fleet? And they said, yes, we would love that. So we agreed with them and, got into negotiations and worked out a charter where they would charter the ships from us and we would put the money into making them seaworthy and, making sure that they met all the Coast Guard standards and fluffed up all the interiors with new soft goods, upholstery and bedspreads and all that kind of stuff. And so we went to the auction, put in a very low bid and won. And we ended up paying like maybe 18 cents on the dollar compared to what we would have paid a couple of years prior. And so then now we were in the cruise ship business. And shortly after that, another cruise line went bankrupt, and we bought the loan from a pair of banks that held the titles to three of their ships. They were, basically those three ships were collateral for the loan. And since the company was bankrupt, they defaulted on the loan. So we bought that from the banks. And then it took about a year to gain actual title. We had to go through U.S. Marshal auctions and say, oh, my husband did most of that, and it took him pretty much a year to go through all of that. But then we had three more ships. So we chartered those three ships to the same little company. So now they had five of our ships in their service. And we poured money into those to get them ready because there had been some deferred maintenance. And we fixed them up and put them into service in Alaska. Some of them started operating on the Columbia River, on the border between Washington and Oregon, and also down to the Sea of Cortez in Mexico. And so for quite a number of years, we just were very happily chartering these ships to this cruise line, and it was wonderful. All we had to do was collect the lease payments every month. So
But it shows that you have the capacity to think outside the box and the courage to take calculated risks.
yeah.
And what strikes me as I've been listening to you is that these, on the surface, if people would think, oh, buying cruise ships, risky, 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 but you've done such a lot of due diligence. You knew your business, and transferring from aircraft to cruises is not a million miles away in terms of the challenges that you have to look to. And I have every admiration for the fact that you held your nerve and that you went through this and that you created, once again, a really successful business. Do you
Thank
still
you.
have those ships?
No, we don't. So the cruise line that was chartering them wanted to buy them, and that was kind of part of the arrangement when we went in, is that they couldn't afford at the beginning to buy these ships. But as the ships were extremely successful, they kept building up their business to where they could buy the ships from us one at a time. So we, negotiated with them and we sold the ships. And by the time March of 2020 came around, which I'm sure everyone has that
Yes.
indelibly branded in their brain. We had one ship left, and we got a phone call. We were in Maui and couldn't get out of Hawaii because the flights had just stopped. And anyway, we got a phone call saying, well, we can't make the lease payments because the ship is tied up, that we're not allowed to operate it. And, obviously we had to say, well, yeah, we understand, but that hurt.
Sure it did. But at
Yeah.
least it was not the whole fleet by that time. That
No, so
really,
we had just
really
just
helped.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah, one left. And that ship sat for nearly 2 years.
good, great.
And we realized, as COVID, trundled along, that it's gonna take a while for the cruise industry to come back from this.
Yes.
And we felt that this was the sign that this was time for another pivot for us. And we negotiated with the same cruise line to sell it to them. And of course they bought it for a lot less than it would have been sold for otherwise, because it wasn't being used, so it wasn't making any money, so its value had declined. But we were okay, and we sold that to them in early 2022. And so, uh, actually, uh, before that, we had we were sitting in Maui, you know, not twiddling our thumbs, like everybody else, taking walks on empty beaches and things like that, and trying to assess, where is the world going from here? What is the landscape going to look like? What is the world economy going to look like? And where's the next best thing? And we were listening to podcasts and news shows and just really, analyzing what was going on in the world, and decided that real estate was always going to have value.
Yes.
It doesn't matter what happens, real estate is going to be a solid, you know,
Yes.
investment. And we had already been investing in real estate. On the side, we had been investing in real estate since the early 1990s. So it was not a new thing for us. And of course, my husband's background was real estate. And so we found out about a company that was teaching people how to get involved in syndicating multifamily apartment complexes.
Yeah.
So you would go into a syndication, and you'd have general partners that found the deals and or negotiated to buy these apartment complexes. And we're talking about like 100, 200 units per complex. And then you could invest as a limited partner in this syndication and have a part ownership in it, and then not have any operational responsibility, but just, get some cash flow and hopefully a nice payout when the property eventually sold. And so we thought, oh, okay, this sounds wonderful. And we learned about some tax benefits and so forth. So I was like, all right, this is the thing. So in 2021, we joined this group and became members of their multifamily millionaire mastermind, and just jumped in and started learning that business. And, I know what you're going to say is, well, okay, this is a totally different, industry. But we had learned by this time that there are certain generalized principles in business, and they would apply whether it was the business that we were originally running with, chartered aircraft, to cruise ships, to real estate. You use the same principles. So we've been doing that ever since.
We're going to go for a short break, but when we come back, I want to explore those principles because I think there are many people who are looking at their lives, looking at the economic climate and thinking, how do I manage to the dream, to live a good life? What are the principles I need to be aware of in order to make sure that I protect myself and my family going
Yes.
forward? And I think we live in a time when inflation is high, uncertainty is high, and people are tired, I think, and want that sense of possibility. And so part of understanding those principles, I think, opens the door of possibilities. So don't go away. We've got a lot to talk about. We'll be back in just a minute. Welcome back. So, Ralph, you before the break, you were talking about whether we're talking about planes, boats, or buildings. the business principles are very similar. And before we started recording, I was talking about the fact I think very often that the principles for having a successful business are the principles for living a successful life. So I'd be
Mm.
really grateful if you could share those principles. And I know you work now as a mentor for people. Do you work with people who are just starting as their journey as business people, or do you work mainly with people who are along the way in order to become more successful? Let's just talk about that for a minute before we go into the principles.
Okay. Well, both.
Okay.
The principles, and I've developed an online course. So that's perfect for people starting out. It's a lower price point. And the principles are very valuable, whether you have a really small business or just starting out, or even if you have a bigger business. But for the bigger businesses who are a little bit more along the way, I've got a mastermind program, and that includes more of my personal guidance and going through the principles that are in the course and helping them apply them to their business. But you asked about the principles,
Yes.
and a couple of years ago when I started this, I looked back at my career, our career, and tried to identify what was it that were the key ingredients to our success. What set us apart? And what are the things that are the foundation that any business needs in order to have lasting success?
Yes.
And also, what was it that allowed us to have the life that we were leading? Because really, for over 20 years, we've been living the dream. We have two homes, we've got a yacht, we travel around the world. It's just like everybody says, "Oh, you guys are living the dream. I want to do what you do." And that's where a couple of years ago, our daughters said, "Mom, you should just teach people because they want this living the dream kind of life that you have. So teach them how to do it." I was like, oh, well, okay. I don't know how to do that, but I'll figure it out. So,
Well, the thing is, you know what to teach. The actual teaching bit is probably far less difficult than knowing how to be successful. And having learnt that actually by doing it, the practical application means that you've got so much credibility. It must make it easier because people are going to listen to you because they can see the very evidence of you living the dream.
I hope so. Yes. And I feel like it's kind of like been there, done that. So,
So
and
talk us
and
through
I
the
can,
principles.
yeah, and I just want to say I really can relate to people who are in the shoes that I was in a
Yes.
couple of decades ago, where I had young kids and we were constantly working all the time. Our daughter was doing her homework at the office because we weren't ready to go home until like 7 or 8 o'clock at night. And this is terrible. But um, so I know what that feels like. And I figured out how to get out of that and how to set up the business so that the business could run without my constantly being there to keep my eyes on it or my husband's eyes on it. So that's where these principles came from, is like, okay, what were the things? And the very first one was you've got to have systems. You've got to put systems in place. And I credit a book that was recommended to us by Robert Kiyosaki, who was a friend of ours, and he was our mentor. And this was before he wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And he said, Ral and John, go get this book. And it's called The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. And it's the book that anybody thinking of going into business for themselves needs to read. And it sets up, what an entrepreneur looks like and what the different hats are that an entrepreneur needs to wear and how to set up your business so that it can grow and you can multiply it. So we studied that book and we implemented what that book told us to do. We did. And that was one of the things that set us apart is I recommended that book to many people and they said, "Oh yeah, I bought that book and it was great." I said, "Well, did you do
What
did
it's
you follow his advice?" And they said, "No, no." So
People are very interesting, aren't they? I mean, there's
yeah,
nothing
yeah.
like
So
the
it's
number of reasons people find for not doing things and
yeah. Well,
sabotage.
yeah, and it does take time to figure out the systems and to know where you need a system and what system is going to work. And sometimes you make the wrong choice. And so then you have to correct. It's a process. And the systems it's not a set it and forget it. It's a constant process. So starting with systems, and then you have to have mechanisms to track your data, to measure your performance, and to have reports set up. That's how we were able to monitor the company from wherever we were, whether we were in Maui or on a cruise ship in Antarctica or wherever, is that we had these reports that were coming to us that, daily, weekly, monthly reports, so that we knew all the KPIs, key performance indicators of the company. And if something looked awry, we could, give them a call and say, hey, watch this. This needs to be corrected. So you have to have that. And then you have to use leverage. And you have to figure out what kind of leverage can I use? And sometimes leverage is having a team that you can delegate to. And sometimes leverage is getting education. That's a fantastic form of leverage. And using technology. At one point in our Hawaiian vacations journey, we realized that we didn't have a very good leverage because all the reservations were coming in to our team by phone. Whether it was from a travel agent or an individual customer, our agents had to be on the phone saying hi and yes, when do you want to go? And da 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 da. And this took time. And oh goodness, we need to automate this. And so we spent a lot of money developing an internal reservation system that could go online on the internet. And it was like early 2000, 2001 that we flipped the switch on that. And that's when our business just really mushroomed and just took off. Sorry, that's a pun about, airline business taking off. But anyway, that immediately improved our bottom line. We were able to do more with less staff, and people could make reservations 24/7, and they could do it from their home. And it was just so much leverage. So that was extreme leverage. So there's that, automation, technology, delegating, maybe outsourcing, finding another firm. Do you outsource your payroll or your bookkeeping, or do you find somebody else to do your marketing, your social media, whatever it is? That's all leverage. So then the next principle is to develop your culture. Really be intentional about your company culture. And we were. And and by the way, I had gone back to college in the early 90s, and my degree was in organizational management, and I studied organizational culture, and I studied, Deming's total quality management. And so I instituted a total quality management program for Hawaiian vacations, and we learned through this process that, oh, our customers were not always that delighted with us. We were not delivering the service that they really wanted. It's like, oh my God, we need to fix this. So that's when we totally changed our company culture and made us totally focused on delighting our customers, which, as I mentioned before, was why we were so successful and able to sell our company.
Can I just ask you to identify, you what was going on and what the feedback through that process was and how you changed it? Because I think it's very easy to just say, they weren't happy and then we changed things. But what sort of things were going on that they didn't like, and how did you shift that into a culture where they were getting what they wanted consistently or what they needed consistently?
That's an excellent question. So some of the feedback we were getting is, for one thing, they were sitting on hold on the phone too long.
Mhm.
We had only so many sales agents and we had multiple lines, but some of the lines were just blinking, blinking, blinking. And so when we got the feedback that people were unhappy that they were, on hold for 20, 30, or more minutes, and like, oh, okay, we got to fix that. So we started instituting tracking, tracking the metrics of how long people were on hold. We, had to get some software to
Yeah.
help us to do that. And then we had to assign that task to our, reservations manager, like, you need to pay attention to how long people are on hold, or how long people were also walking in the door to our office and sitting and waiting for somebody to help them. And so these things were, oh, okay, we need to do this, we need to do that. And it was a process. We didn't just snap our fingers and, oh, okay, all of a sudden it's all is better. But we kept working on it and kept working on it. And that's part of the impetus for spending the money on the reservation system, is that we could avoid that uh, wait time, because they could just get online and get their booking immediately without having to wait. And so sometimes, and back in those days, we had paper tickets, and people were saying that they weren't getting their tickets in time, and just that kind of feedback. We got feedback about the in-flight service sometimes too, and we would make those corrections as well. But predominantly, is it the customer experience was irritating and annoying to them, doing business with us, and we needed to fix that. And travel agents were our customers too, because a lot of people would go to their travel agent, and so when they complained about waiting on hold, or not getting the information that they needed and so forth, okay, now we're going to deal with this. So in the early 90s, when I was creating this total quality management program for the company, the main focus was becoming customer centric. Our entire organization needed to be customer centric. And that was a total cultural shift for us. And I would say that before that, we were more focused on profit and making sure that we filled those planes. And, because we were we were taking a huge risk. So we were very focused on the money aspect. And we recognized that, okay, well, that's fine and good. And yes, we need to be profitable, but we need to take care of our customers.
And
And
isn't it
that's
interesting
how.
when you have that approach, of course, you make more profit because you're going to get repeat customers, so on. I'd like you to work certainly with the banks in the UK and big organizations, because one of the things I think that's happening more and more is because companies have become less customer centric. My particular pet hate is chatbots that don't understand your question and take you in circles. And I can see that your customers, listening to your customers and actually providing what they needed, but in a way that worked for them,
Mhm.
was a huge element in your success. Not the only thing, but a very much, as you talked about, leverage in terms of engaging with your customers and maintaining that relationship with your customers over time.
Right. Right. And, it all ties together, because in order to serve our customers, we had to go back to systems,
Yeah,
go back to principle one. What
absolutely.
systems can we employ to make it easier and smoother and more efficient? And we needed our staff to be efficient as well. Right. So it all came together, and using the metrics, using leverage. And so that was the culture piece. And then the next piece, the next principle is your team. How do you empower your team? How do you build your team and nurture your team? We wanted people to grow. When they joined us, a lot of our staff were entry level people, taking reservations, and some of them had not been to college. And one of the other books that Robert Kiyosaki recommended to us was called The Great Game of Business by Jack Stack. And in that, we learned about open book management. And we're like, oh, what is that? What is open book management? And what he recommended was you share your financials with your entire team, and you let them know how you're doing, and you let them know what is it that affects the bottom line. What can they do to impact the success of the company? So our people didn't know how to read a financial statement because they had never been exposed to that. What's a P&L? What's a balance sheet? So we taught them. I conducted little classes, and I would put the people in the classes and say, okay, here's our balance sheet, and here's what you look at. And this line means this, and this line, and we would just go down, line by line, and educated them. And that was leverage for us too, because the more educated they were, the more productive they could be, and the more of an asset they were to our company. So they became empowered, they got excited. And then the next part of it was that we had incentives. We would create a bonus plan, an incentive plan. And okay, when the company wins, you win. And my husband developed an acronym called WERQ, or his work ethic. And the W was win-win, the E was efficiency, the R was responsibility, and the Q was quality. And okay, these are our guiding principles, and everything that we do has to follow these guiding principles. And so we taught our team that if you're making a decision, you're dealing with a customer or a travel agent or a vendor even, are you following the win-win, the efficiency, the responsibility, and the quality? And if you make a decision and it fit those four criteria, those principles, we'll back you.
Yes.
So they had empowerment. They were authorized to make decisions. Now we had certain guidelines. It's like nobody was authorized to refund, over X amount or spend over X amount and so forth. But Robert Kiyosaki taught us about a fruit bowl theory of business, which was like the bowl is a static shape. It's wood or china or metal or whatever your bowl is made of, and that shape stays the same. The fruit inside the bowl can be a mixture of, grapes, bananas, apples, or whatever you want to put in that bowl, and that you can mix that up. So we taught our team, this is your bowl.
Yeah.
You can operate within that confines of that bowl, and we'll support you. And sometimes we had to bite our tongue a little bit. It's like, oh, okay, well, we didn't really like that decision, but we had to step back and realize, okay, they were doing the best that they could to follow these guidelines. So we supported them, and then maybe we put in another guideline if we needed to. But you don't punish the person. You look to the system to make the correction. And so that's what we did.
You are talking about they're all principles for conscious leadership.
Yes.
Ultimately, the quality of the leader determines the quality of the business through time. We're going to go for our last break. When we come back, what I'd like to do is first, before we do anything else, is where people can find you if they want to find out more about what you do or they want to work with you. So don't go away. We've still got more to go on the show. Back in a minute. Welcome back. So, Ral, where can people find you if they would like to know more about what you do or indeed want to work with you?
I love that question. And I made it very simple. If you know my name, Ral West, you can find me. My website is ralwest.com.
Mhm.
On Facebook, I'm Ral West. Uh, LinkedIn, I'm Ral West. I have a free newsletter on LinkedIn. It's called Ral's Success Principles. Please subscribe to that. And I also have a YouTube channel, Ral West.
Brilliant.
And there's so much content between the LinkedIn newsletter and the YouTube channel. There's tons of free content. I also have a free webinar that's available on my website. You can sign up for it. And there's so much that you can learn from all of those assets. And if you want, you can take my course that's available on my website. And it's an 8 module course. It's all pre-recorded, so you can do it at your own pace. And then if you're wanting to be at a little higher level and get some more intimate time with me and my guidance, then join my mastermind. And that you can find out about on my website too.
Sounds great. Thank you very much. Now, you're living the dream, and most often you think, well, what is the dream? But you are living most people's dream by the sound of it. But where now? I mean, what is there still for you to do? What are the things that are on your bucket list?
Oh, so many. My bucket list keeps growing too. Um, and I'm very adamant about the fact that living the dream is personal.
Yes.
You have to define what living the dream means for you. I don't like to fish, so going on fishing trips is not going to be part of my living the dream.
I'm with you. I'll go whale watching. That sounded wonderful, but I'm not fishing,
Yeah.
no.
I also don't play golf or pickleball or anything like that. So living the dream for me is being able to travel. We have a daughter and 3 grandchildren living in Australia. We need to be able to go see them. And as I said, we love to travel. We love cruise ships. Go figure. And We love cruising to exotic and unusual destinations on small cruise ships. They're kind of adventure oriented. And and having the freedom to choose when to work and when not to work.
Mhm.
Sometimes I work very hard and I really buckle down, nose to the grindstone, and then I go off and I play for a few weeks. So, I have that freedom to pick and choose, but I have the systems in place. You mentioned earlier, how does this apply to one's personal life? Well, I use all these principles in my personal life too. I have plenty of systems and I make things so easy for myself. Birthdays, Christmas, medical appointments, you name it, they're all systematized. And I have a way to track it all. And I use leverage. I get people to help me do things. I, if I don't have to do something like clean my house, I don't do it. I pay somebody to do that. So many ways that you can use these principles to make your life easier. And maybe living the dream just means being able to go to the kids' soccer games and, having the freedom to go get a massage, go have a weekend of, a yoga retreat or something. So whatever that is, you can do it if you put all of these principles and use these tools, get automation. I'm using AI to help me sort my email inbox because it was taking me an hour or two a day just to go through all these emails. And so I found somebody who knew how to do this. I didn't know how. So I hired somebody to say, find an AI tool for me. And they did, and they implemented it. It's saving me like at least an hour a day. You
Yes.
know,
I think
so
there'll be many people here who look at your life and think, I'm so far removed from a life where those are my options, that my life is, I'm struggling back where you were, where you're, robbing people to pay Paul using credit cards and so on.
yes.
And I think it would be easy if you're listening to this to just dismiss the idea of systems. But
Oh,
ultimately, they work at any level. And
yes.
it's not about money, is it? It's about,
Oh,
although that helps, and I'm not decrying that. But
yeah.
I was smiling to myself because at the weekend, I wrote all of the birthday and anniversary cards for the next 3 months. And they're
Oh,
sitting in a box in my hallway in date order, so that as I go past, I think, oh, do I need to post that today or not? Um, and I
perfect.
use the birthday book. It's the bring back the quill version of your automated system. It's still a system.
It is a system. It is a system. I tell you, there's one system that I revere. I think it's so clever. We had a gal working for us who had 9 children.
Wow.
And like, oh my God, how do you do that? And she said, yeah, well, you have to be really organized. And I'm like, yeah, I bet. And so she was telling us about how when they do the laundry, you can imagine the laundry for a family of,
11.
11.
Goodness me. Yes.
Yes. Oh my God.
Like a football
And
team.
so, yeah, so she created this system of she had cubbies, so she had, the seven, I don't know whether it was 9 kids across and 7 days of the week down or whatever it was. But anyway, when they did the laundry, instead of folding them and putting them away in drawers or closets, they would put them in the cubby for what each person needed for the outfit for that day. So they had the week, Monday, okay, Monday, this is Bobby, this is Susie, and so they had it all lined out. Talk about efficiency. I mean, that was just brilliant. And it was not automated, but it
Well,
was a system.
it was human automation, if you like. But I think
Yeah,
the principle of look at your life and look at where the pinch points are. And
yes,
it's about being creative in terms of your thinking and
yes.
how can I save myself time and energy and effort. It's about working smarter rather than working harder, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. And so you led me to the next point, which is it's a mindset. You have to have a mindset. I don't care whether you have, a job, you're an employee, or whatever you're doing, you have to have a mindset of how can I make my life the way I want it? And am I doing what I love? And I have my pet peeve is people doing something that they hate just to make a buck or a pound or a quid. And don't do something that you hate. figure out a way to follow your passion and to do what you love and hopefully support your lifestyle. And I tend to believe if you follow your passion, the money will follow. And there's got to be a way to do that. And I think having that positive mindset and taking a look at your life, just as you said, finding out where those points are that like, oh, I'm spending too much time doing X.
Yes.
How can I make that simpler? Like if you have to make lunches for all your kids, you bring the groceries home, and instead of just putting the groceries away, divide the groceries into the lunch piles, or something like that, so that you can, systematize anything. Um, your birthday card system is brilliant. Um, at this point in my life, I don't do paper cards because I'm traveling too much and I don't know where I'm going to be when I need to, to post something. So I started using e-cards quite a few years ago. But they're calendared. And so I go through every month. I have my list of birthdays and anniversaries and so forth that I set them up. And then people are saying, how do you always remember my birthday? I have a system.
Sadly, we're out of time. There's lots for more we could talk about. Before we finish, we're very proud to belong to an organisation called B1G1, Buy One, Give One, and it uses giving, kindness as part of the branding. And I invite all of my guests to choose one of four themes. There are a number of projects within the themes. They are all well vetted, well run. Every penny goes to the project, and we donate on your behalf. And those projects are clean water, education, health, and reforestation. Which of those would you like us to donate to on your behalf?
Education.
Thought it might be. Um, and remember, just by listening, you're making a difference because we donate meals to the hungry based on the number of listeners. So please do, get other people to listen because that will help somebody just by you enjoying the program. I'd love to know what you think. You can email me at Gina Gardiner and Friends at gmail.com. And I have a free conscious leadership blueprint that you can have for free. All you need to do is to email me, Gina Gardner and Friends, and put blueprint in the subject line, and I will send you a free PDF. And if you're a musician, you've got to be great. But if you'd like the opportunity to play some of your music and have a formal interview tracking your musical journey, then complete the form, which you'll find at Gina Gardner Tomorrow's Talent, and you could be on that program sharing your music with millions of people. It just remains for me to say, Ral, thank you very much for joining me. Thank you for listening. See you on the next show. Bye bye now.
Thanks, Gina.